We're going to speak to the Justice Secretary, Liz Truss, who's in our central London studio. This is about a story that millions of motorists could be seeing their car insurance slashed by around £40 under new plans to cut down on whiplash claims. The government unveiling those plans to crack down on a number of these claims today, with insurers passing the savings on to drivers. Good morning to you, Justice Secretary. So much to talk about this morning. Let's talk about the things you're doing for the motor industry and drivers. Everybody will have noticed that their car insurance over the last few years creeping up and up. Insurance companies blaming a cash for crash culture. What are you planning to do about it?
Well, that's absolutely right. What we're seeing is law-abiding motorists are paying extra in their insurance because of claims for whiplash on very minor injuries, some of which are fraudulent, meaning that the overall bill goes up. And we estimate that's about £2 billion across the board, the total cost of those personal injury claims.
And insurance companies are promising they will pass that saving on to motorists. I just want to move on to some other subjects we're talking about here on Sunrise this morning. The front page of the Daily Mail. This headline sounds like quite the party. Juicy steaks, takeaway fish and chips, vodka, drugs. Where is this all happening? In our prisons, apparently. They're asking what is going on in our jails. And as Justice Secretary, you're probably the best person to ask about that. What exactly is going on?
Well, as I've said, we've got very serious issues in our prisons with the levels of violence. What I'm doing about that is, first of all, cracking down on drugs and mobile phones. We've introduced new testing for psychoactive substances, which we've rolled out across the prison estate. We're also recruiting more staff to make sure we make our prisons safer, but also we're spending our time turning offenders' lives around, getting them off drugs, getting them into work and making our prisons places of purposeful activity. So that work is going on. We're already recruiting significant additional staff. We've got the drugs tests in place. It will take time, though, to reform the situation in our prisons.
That's the thing. It is going to take time. And, Justice Secretary, that doesn't seem to be enough for the prison officers. They tried to walk out on Tuesday. I mean, they're saying the system is in meltdown. You mentioned there violence, drugs, suicides, a prisoner stabbed to death. Prison officers worried they might be next. They walked out. You actually went to court to stop them. If conditions are so bad in our prisons that prison officers are willing to risk being put there themselves to highlight the issue, it suggests you haven't actually got a grip on the prison system. A lot of senior legal figures saying that you're out of your depth.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
I was just saying all the problems in the prisons, a lot of people saying you haven't got a grip on the situation, change isn't coming quickly enough, senior legal figures saying you're out of your depth on this.
Change is happening in our prison system, but it will take time. We have to recognise there is a serious issue. What is not acceptable is unlawful action, and that's why we took out an injunction. I'm pleased that prison officers have now gone back to work. They do a fantastic job. I've announced we're recruiting 2,500 more prison officers. We're putting £100 million more in the prison budget, and we're taking immediate steps to crack down on drugs, to roll out those tests, to put in body-worn cameras, to make sure our prisons...
You have spoken about these plans before, weeks ago, but the problems are still going on. These plans you announced, yet the prison officers still walked out. I'll ask you again, senior legal figures saying you are out of your depth. Are you?
Well, I am getting to sorting out this problem. And ever since I was appointed in July, I've been clear prison safety is my #1 priority. We've rolled out the drugs test. We're getting the new staff in. I announced the money for the 10 most challenging prisons.
Justice Secretary,
we're now recruited.
With respect, you're not answering
Excuse me, can I finish
the? Are you out of your depth? You're talking about plans that are going to come in around a year's time, but on a day-to-day basis, the prison officers are saying
clear with
they're not safe. They don't feel safe going to work.
Those staff are being recruited already. We've already recruited half the additional staff we need in 10 of those most challenging prisons. We've put in those new measures on drugs. But the solution is not unlawful action. I am keen to work with prison officers. I think they do a fantastic job. I'll be meeting them later today. Now they've made the decision to go back to work. Now the POA have made that decision. But what we need to do is work together to make our prisons safer. This is a problem that is built up over a number of years. It's due to the rise of psychoactive substances.
Slashed prison officer numbers. They slashed them by, a large margin. And even the numbers that you're proposing that you're going to make up with new recruitment, it's not coming anywhere near close to the numbers to what they were originally.
Well, what the numbers that we are putting in do is allow a ratio of 1 officer for every 6 prisoners, which will enable us to keep prisons safe, and it will also enable us to make sure that we are turning prisoners' lives around.
How long is that recruitment process going to take?
Well, the recruitment process has already started, and in 10 of the most challenging jails, we've already recruited half of the additional staff we need. That's just in the last month or so. So we're already making progress on recruiting those extra staff. We already put the drugs tests in. We've trained up the sniffer dogs. We've got a process going on to make sure that governors get all the support they need in prisons at the moment. The way to sort out these problems, which I fully acknowledge there are, and I've not tried to hide from those, is to work together to make the situation better on the ground. It is not taking unlawful industrial action. That's why I'm pleased prison officers have gone back to work. I will be speaking to the Prison Officers Association, and I want us to continue talks to make sure that we get a long-term solution that works for prison officers.
OK, well, while we're on the subject of chaos, that's been one of the words used about the government at the moment and their plans, or lack thereof, for Brexit. Apparently the government all over the place. You're in the thick of it. Are the government all over the place on the plan for Brexit?
Absolutely not. The Prime Minister has a very clear plan for Brexit. What we want to achieve is we want to reduce the level and get more control over the immigration coming from the EU, and we want to get a good deal in trade and services. But what she is not prepared to do is tell everybody across Europe what our negotiating strategy and what our negotiating terms are in advance of a negotiation. That would clearly be a foolish thing to do.
Well,
so people asking for endless amounts of detail are taking completely the wrong approach. What we need to do is get a good deal, and that's exactly what the Prime Minister is doing.
OK, well, the government was taken to High Court over the Prime Minister's decision not to consult Parliament about any negotiating plan. The government lost, and you're now challenging this decision next month. On what grounds do you plan to make that challenge?
Well, that is not a matter for me as Lord Chancellor. My role is to uphold the independence of the judiciary, which I take extremely seriously. The government is appealing the decision. That's a matter for the Attorney General.
Yes, speaking about your role as Lord Chancellor, when the judges made that decision, they were hauled over the coals in the press. One newspaper describing them, I think, as a menace to society, a menace to the people. And you were quite slow to come out and defend them. And when you did defend them, it wasn't that robustly, according to a lot of senior legal figures. How would you respond to that? Do you think you stuck up for the judiciary system enough?
My role is defending the independence of the judiciary, and the government has been absolutely clear that we are following the decision, that we completely respect the decision that was made by the High Court. The government has decided to appeal to the Supreme Court. But I think it would be very dangerous if government ministers started to say that particular headlines in the press are unacceptable. I think that is wrong. We have an independent judiciary, which I'm incredibly proud of. They are world-renowned for being impartial and incorruptible. But we also have a free press, and it's very important that we don't, as government ministers, try to tell the press what they should and shouldn't print.
But I'm just looking at the Constitutional Reform Act, and your duty as Lord Chancellor, your additional duty is expressed in the oath of office to defend that independence of the judiciary system, not of the press.
Well, that's what I am, defending the independence of the judiciary, absolutely. But all of us have responsibility as government ministers to make sure that we defend, well, it's a personal principle of mine that freedom of the press is an important part of our democracy and our society. So I think those two things, independence of the judiciary and freedom of the press, go hand in hand. We can't have a successful, democratic, free society without having both of those things.
OK, Justice Secretary Liz